financial survival, I feel, is a bit overdone for most folks. The problem is that they want to have a certain lifestyle.
Hmm.
And the fear is, what if I can't maintain this lifestyle? And yeah, my solution is to not have that lifestyle.
Welcome to Stoic Conversations. My name is Caleb Ontiveros, and today I'm speaking with entrepreneur, author, and podcaster Darius Foroux. We'll be focusing on his most recent book, The Stoic Path to Wealth, a sensible and useful introduction to both investing and Stoicism. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's start with this broad question. What's your story?
Yeah, that's a broad question indeed. But yeah, my story about investing starts in 2007, and my story about Stoicism starts in 2014-15. The first time I bought stocks, I was 20 years old, and I was studying business, and I had the opportunity to work during my evenings at the ING, the large international bank. And after a while, I had the opportunity to get on their investment side to become a mutual fund advisor. And remember, this is before the financial crisis, where all you had to do was take a 4-week training and then you could become a advisor. And I thought I was this investing genius, and I've always been passionate about the stock market. So I thought, this is the perfect opportunity for me to buy because I work at a bank. That was my only strategy.
Mhm.
Within the year, I was down 60% because '08 crash happened and I had no clue what to do. So I was really committed to figure it out. And by it, I mean how to make money in the stock market. So I got on this education spree, got a degree in business and specialized in finance, and still couldn't invest. I was still too scared, because I finally sold my stocks in 2010. And then within a few months, the stock market went on this tear that lasted basically until 2020. Um, and I always felt like I missed out, but I didn't have a framework, or I didn't have the confidence to come back to the stock market until I discovered Stoicism, which was around that period of 2014-15, when I was, like so many of us who discover the Stoics, I was going through some challenges in my personal life. My grandmother passed away, my relationship ended, and I wasn't happy in my career at the time. I was climbing the corporate ladder in London at an IT research firm, and I started to turn to books for the answers about what to do and how to get unstuck. And I
Mhm.
discovered Stoicism in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week. He had this small section on Stoicism, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. So I started to read the original works, and I immediately bought everything that I could find, from meditations to Epictetus' discourses and Seneca's letters. And it's funny because from the moment I started reading Stoicism, I instantly thought to myself, how can I use this to become a better investor? And yeah, from there, I really went on this whole writing spree and writing books and finally finding my way back to the stock market.
Very nice. So, how do you describe Stoicism? How do you understand it? Boil it down into that, that elevator pitch.
Yeah, for me, the way that I explain it to folks who never heard of it is like this. Like I always say, Stoicism is the most practical philosophy because you can summarize it in one sentence, which is simply focus on what you can control and ignore everything else. And to be honest, it's not just something that I say on non-Stoicism podcasts. It's really something that I really live by because for me, it's really something that helps me to stay grounded, not only during personal challenges, but also
Hmm.
when it comes to my career or investing and relationships and everything. So that's how I looked at it from the beginning and still look at it 10 years later.
Yeah, it's one of those essential ideas that's immediately useful,
Yeah.
but also has some amount of depth to it, I think, that you can keep
Mhm.
on returning to, what is under my control and what does that mean to say something's up to me, uh, and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah, exactly. That's the funny thing. It's just one sentence, but its application is endless. And still to this day, I run into situations where I think, oh, wow, I never really applied it to in this area. For example, in the last year, I've had a little bit more back issues than my entire life. I've always had some back issues because I used to play basketball in college and I had this kind of severe injury at some point and when I was I think 18 or 17, and since then it always haunted me. It kind of comes and goes, but over the last year I think as a combination of sitting a lot as a writer, um, working out a lot as well to kind of combat that, but maybe going a little bit overboard, not having real balance, working
Hmm.
out too hard. Um, so overstressing my body, but at the same time also sitting too much, not enough flexibility and stretching. So over last year, I had more of these issues, and every time my back hurts, it's always at the wrong time. When I'm in the middle of remodeling my house, or when I actually last week when I was doing a lot of these interviews, I also kind of hurt my back picking something heavy up, and during those moments, I think, "Oh man, why me?" You know, like the classic, "Why do I have to be that guy who always has back problems?" And I was talking to someone about this, and the thing that I often return to is that Epictetus quote where he says, "Look at life as a play." And you're given a role, and you have to play that role to your best ability in that sense. And that's something that I really that took me a while to really understand and apply in certain areas because the guy that I was talking to said, "Yeah, well, I know a lot of folks who live in certain underdeveloped areas and apply that philosophy and always stay where they are." And I said, "Yeah, that's true. But the beauty about Stoicism is that you can be very selective about how you apply the advice. It doesn't mean that one piece of advice is universal.
Hmm.
You can apply it to your health problems, but not apply it to your career." And yeah, that's one of those things that contributes to the fact that you are never finished learning about Stoicism and also never finished talking about it because through talking, you uncover new applications.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's through the discourses,
Yeah.
lectures, conversations like these, listening to other conversations, um, that one uncovers so many philosophical insights or applications of philosophy. I suppose it's no accident that Socrates' works were dialogues with other people. I think it's
Yeah.
essential to the activity of doing philosophy that it's done with others. Sometimes perhaps that's overlooked when you're
Yeah.
reading by yourself or
Yeah, that's a great point,
yeah.
actually. That's something that, yeah, until recently, I never really thought about because through those conversations, you also uncover. new things inside you that you are now forced to articulate, but also through certain questions, or maybe someone else trying to challenge your ideas or see how you respond,
Hmm.
is also quite beneficial. So yeah, I totally agree. It's a great practice, and doing philosophy is definitely a thing that me as an introvert and as a reader never really, well, I wouldn't say never, but often underappreciated. And especially now that I'm having a lot of conversations around stoicism and investing, I I see the benefits, not only to kind of spreading the word and hoping to reach more people, but also as a emotional practice for myself. So yeah, I can say that until now I haven't been tired of talking about it.
That's great. Yeah, and it is so useful. And as we were saying earlier, there's with, I suppose, that depth of some of these Stoic teachings, maxims, what have you, and then also that point that often will come to Stoics. People who discover Stoicism find it's useful in one area and then move to another area and find that it's applicable in that part of their life too, whether it's dealing with injuries, thinking about one's career, or as you write about in your book, investing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what then is the key ways in which Stoicism is relevant for investing?
Yeah. I think the most impactful way that I can describe that is by the relationship that you have with money. Because through reading Stoicism, I learned to become indifferent to money and the outcomes in my career, but also with investing. And because of my childhood growing up in a family where we were living from paycheck to paycheck, I always had this scarcity mindset where
Mm-hmm.
I believed that you need to hold on to every dollar that you earn because it's not coming back. And I've kind of went through my life and career that way, thinking that the key to becoming wealthy is just to hoard money, and that causes a lot of fear and tension. And this is why what I was mentioning about the moment that I started reading Stoicism, I instantly related it to money and investing because that was my lifelong pursuit to become wealthy because of my childhood. Because I said, when I grow up, I don't want to be in a situation where I have to worry about money again. So that was my goal in life, to become free and not just to buy cars or whatever or any material things. That I always had that sense from early on, so I never got on the hedonic treadmill. But on the other side, wasn't sure how I could really grow my wealth or the bit of money that I did save in the early years of my career. And when I read the Stoics, one of the first things that I ran into was, again, an Epictetus quote where he says, if you can pursue money staying honest or virtuous, or can't remember exact words, but he would say, by all means, do so. But of course, the most important thing is virtue and being honest, and not letting the the pursuit of money impact your decisions in life, and not letting greed get to you, and those types of things. So I thought, wow, this is really fascinating because here is a philosopher who's known to be very stringent, living a very simple life, saying that money is not bad. It's what it does to people. So if I can make sure that if I just stay on the path, stay balanced, I could pursue money. And then another thing that I read that I found really helpful was the whole thing about indifference and as- related to the things that you can't control. And then I thought, okay, I can control my effort and how hard I work because that, of course, will determine my income to a certain level. But I
Hmm.
don't control the stock market, or if I invest in real estate prices, or if I start a business, I also don't control how many people end up buying. Of course, I'll control my effort and what I put into it, but the exact outcomes that's not within my power. So I should be indifferent to that, and that gave me the confidence and the almost the approval to just focus on the craft and focus on the process. And once I started doing that, really started to look at investing and life and my career just in a different way. Because when it came to investing, I finally thought to myself, oh, okay, why not just simplify this thing to the core, where it's impossible to simplify it even more. So, like a common investment piece of advice is to invest in the S&P 500 index. This is the piece of advice that Warren Buffett gives, and John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, he kind of revolutionized this passive way of investing. And for the folks who are not aware of the S&P 500, right? There's 500 largest companies in the U.S. Um, that are active in almost all industries. So you kind of get a real good exposure to the entire economy. So as long as the economy keeps growing, the index keeps going up. And basically, just ignore everything else. Like, don't poison your mind with all these get rich quick schemes and crypto and gold and whatever futures and forex and all of this nonsense that you see on social media, which can work for some people because that's kind of the law of averages. And if enough people trade those things, there are always a few winners, right? And then you'll hear
Right.
about those. So I never say it's impossible, but of course it's possible to make money with those types of pursuits, but the odds are against you. And as a Stoic, I don't like it when odds are against me. I just prefer to choose a more proven path. So that's how I came up with the idea to real simplify everything, not only in my investments, but also in my career. Because at that point, I was like, yeah, what should I do? I want to quit this career. I'd started a business previously with my dad. I didn't love the industry. So I thought, oh, maybe I should, go work for a corporate, for a large company, and I wear a suit and all of that stuff. And I was like, yeah, who cares? I don't want to climb the corporate ladder. It's also not for me. I don't like to be around a lot of people. So I quit, and I'm like, okay, I need to start a business for myself. What kind of business should I start? And then I thought, okay, now I have this opportunity. I'll move it back in with my parents and let me write a book, because I've always loved the idea of becoming a full-time writer. I never had anything to say, and I also didn't think it was you know, a path to building wealth, because I always thought, oh, you need to make a lot of money to become wealthy. But yeah, somehow all of everything came together during that period, and I said, okay, I'm going to write this book. And at the same time, I was studying, of course, still I was studying investing, but also the Stoics. Start to slowly put things together, and that actually took a while, like a year or two, when I finally started think about how I could apply this to my investing strategy. But I said, okay, I'm going to write this book, and then I'll see what happens. I'll put it out there. I'll put everything, all my energy in it. And I started a blog, and then within a few months, I started getting emails from readers, and kind of getting that feedback gave me a lot of confidence, and also it gave me input that I was on the right track. So I basically just kept going, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's what really changed everything. I think not only in my career, my life, but also finances, because I realized, okay, if you do the right thing, if you're patient, you focus on your actions, and you give up your unhealthy pursuit of wealth, you can become wealthy if you're not rich. If you know, if you don't make a lot of money, and yeah, that that's something that took a lot of the pressure away.
Yeah, that's great. There's that common thread between the investing path and your career path, which was patience
Mm,
and consistency. So having
yeah,
the patience just to put, a little bit of money each month, whatever it is, into an index fund while, you see other people taking riskier bets. Some of them, I'm sure, pay off and they always cause one to have that fear of missing out. But, sticking through to that patient, consistent strategy pays off, both, I think, in the domain of investing, but also in careers. So I think writing's a good example of that, where many writers have been at it for decades, and they slowly saw whatever it is, their readership, views, success go up at a pretty slow rate. Usually, it's
yeah,
not the kind of field where very few people blow up. It's demands patience and consistency that can be difficult, and that's
yeah,
something that Stoicism can help
definitely.
with.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a good point. It's a perfect philosophy for people who are in careers or have a desire to do something that requires a lot of patience, like writing, art, anything creative, that has a payoff down the road. And until you get there, you need this system to stay focused and not give up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said something else that's, I think, a crucial point, which is that for the Stoics, wealth, money, it's a preferred and what they call a preferred indifferent. So it's beneficial if you have it, but you never want to sacrifice it for
Yeah,
virtue. It's not needed for the good life. What the good life consists of, being virtuous or playing your roles
yeah,
excellently. And so then it has that aspect where it's not consumerist, materialist. You're not devoting your life to becoming wealthy, but it's also not ascetic or doesn't retreat from the economic world. Some people, because of who they are, their relationships, and so on, maybe pursuing wealth isn't that important. For others, because of who they are, relationships, talents, it might be more important, and something they ought to do their best to pursue, so long as they don't do so at the cost of virtue. I think that's an essential point, because some people might wonder, why are you talking about investing, becoming rich,
yeah,
becoming wealthy on a Stoicism podcast?
yeah,
Uh, I think because for some people, it's, well, for all of us, it's an essential part of our
yeah,
life. And to some degree, some of us are going to be in situations where, really ought to devote ourselves to that project. Others are going to be in a different situation. But all of us, are going to have financial obligations. And, that's just one other area where we can display virtue.
yeah. 100%. It's all about how you pursue the goal. Um, I think it's natural to think there is a conflict there,
Mhm.
and in fact, I've seen a lot of folks on Reddit having these conversations around money and stoicism. And some folks, I think, when they start practicing it, can be against it, but that's also not a stoic thing to be against something, right? In my interpretation, the Stoics were not necessarily against certain things. They were just more indifferent to it, and they say, okay, if you want to pursue money or pursue wealth or whatever, if you think that's right, then who am I to tell you that you are wrong? When it comes to my life and the way that we look at life, we say, money is something that we need. It's something practical, but at the same time, I'm not going to destroy my philosophy. I'm not going to give up my values just because I want to have more money. And that's how I look at it. And I do think that the people who get some success, and I think it's easy to look at this in the field of writing or advice or self-help, whether it's on people who have big Instagram or YouTube followings or any social media, or they are big in a certain area, whether it's, I don't know, mindfulness or business or stoicism. Sometimes I do see, like, I don't want to be that guy.
Hmm.
So I do get that resentment, or kind of get that, oh, okay, like being so obsessed with money and trying to squeeze every penny out of your audience or customers or whatever it is seems dishonest. And that's why I always return to that Epictetus quote. I feel like making money should be done in a honest way, and I genuinely believe that. Not only because it can bite you later on, can come back to you, because I think there are a lot of dishonest people who just can get away with it. And especially in this crowded world, a lot of folks got very rich with these pump and dump schemes in crypto, and actually are still doing those things. Or a lot of folks in the entrepreneurship social media world have these techniques where they aggressively respond to anyone who DMs them with a question.
Hmm.
I've had like readers reaching out to me saying, yeah, I kind of fell for the tactics that so and so's team performed on me. And I think that's kind of a trap that these folks, maybe they start out with the right intentions, but along the way, maybe money comes, fame comes, recognition comes, any of those things that the Stoics warned us for, and they kind of ignore the platitudes of life, which are always true. To not be greedy and not chase pleasure, and then over time they kind of fall in that trap. And I feel like that's something that you can prevent by just prioritizing philosophy over money. So yeah, I think that's the best place to start. And if you have that approach, you also will be more indifferent to the money that you've earned, because you think, okay, of course this is important, I worked for this. And then let's say you invest it and the market goes down. If you are not stoic, then you're thinking to yourself, oh, okay, what will happen? Maybe I should sell, maybe I should stop the pain. And then kind of you take away a lot of the future wealth for yourself. And that's just one example. But yeah, it's such a complex relationship that I think we should always we should always approach with stoicism in mind, because I really don't want to be that person who just becomes materialistic. And let's say, because you never know when in your career, right? Let's say you do what you have any creative pursuit, and you or just professional pursuit, and you get acknowledged. Let's
Hmm.
say you're a designer, you get acknowledged in the design community, they feature you on a magazine or whatever, and like those things can get to your head. And those are the things that I always kept in mind too. It's like, okay, maybe one day something like that will happen. If it happens, I need to have the framework, I need to have the philosophy that keeps me grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. Seneca has this line where he says something to the effect of, cling fast to these three rules: never give into adversity, never trust prosperity, and treat fortune as if anything that
Yeah,
can come to pass will come to
exactly.
pass.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
I love
think,
that.
yeah, it's a great set of three rules. I think what it pulls out in this context is, that point of never trusting prosperity.
Yeah,
Success has risks. The pursuit of success has its own kind of risks associated with it. But the Stoics, also know that poverty has its own kind of moral risks, and people in those situations
yeah,
have different temptations from the rich, and that's just something that, depending on where you fall, you'll need to face the risks that come with that situation. Um, so it's certainly an issue one can't escape.
yeah, yeah. Definitely, poverty also has its as risks, as you say. I think when it comes to frugal living, and of course that's not the same as poverty, but I think you can also be overly frugal, and especially when you are too attached to money, that your your world revolves around money, and then you forget that, oh, I'm doing the exact thing that I was afraid of. Like, I don't want to be that person who's money hungry, but now all I'm thinking about is money. And that's something that I've seen in my family too, and with some family members. And I see that, I'm like, okay, you're actually doing the thing that you don't want to be. And I think like in those cases we forget to be indifferent, because in today's world, I feel if you have a strong skill set, and or not even a strong skill set, you know how to provide value in the economy, and that doesn't require a lot of skills in today's world. You don't have to be the best. Of course, it's better to be really great at what you do. You'll get more rewards. But bottom line is that we can earn a living. So having a a lot of fear around earning a living and around financial survival, I feel, is a bit overdone for most folks. The problem is that they want to have a certain lifestyle.
Hmm.
And the fear is, what if I can't maintain this lifestyle? And yeah, my solution is to not have that lifestyle. you know?
Yeah, it works.
Uh,
Um, so I suppose when you're thinking about stoicism and investing, it can be helpful to think about what's the opposite of a stoic investor. And we've mentioned some common patterns. Some people, they're too greedy. Maybe they make investing too much of or financial matters too much of a priority in their life.
yeah.
Um, but another one that we've mentioned, I want to make clear, is that they just don't invest. You're afraid of investing because you're afraid of loss or something of this sort.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could say more about that.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's very true, because there's this idea with a lot of people that investing is either for rich folks or something that they will do when they earn a certain amount of money, or they think it's for Wall Street. It's not for me. I'm bad with money. I'm bad with numbers. And they have these types of false beliefs. And I think that's a shame, because I have no incentive to promote the S&P 500, other than, of course, I invest in it. But the index will keep going up whether we will invest in it or not, because it's driven by the economy and institutional investors. Because I think it's the ratio has changed now. There are more individual investors than, let's say, 10 years ago, but institutional investors still make up for like somewhere between 60 to 70% of the inflows in the market. And when it comes to individual stocks, there are certain stocks that are owned 90% by institutions. So whether we as individuals invest in the market or not, honestly, doesn't really make a difference, because the pros and these institutions will keep investing the pension money and the rich people money. So the market will keep doing what it's doing. But we as the individuals, we are exchanging our time for money. And I just don't think that's a sustainable strategy. You really need to have, as a citizen of the free world and of the capitalistic world, I feel like you must have a stake in the system. You must have some skin in the game in the right way, because we are the system. The funny thing is that two-thirds of the economy is driven by consumer spending, while 60 to 70% of the stock ownership is done by these institutions. And of course, a lot of folks who have a job have pensions, and of course, you pay for that, and someone else invests your money. But you never know exactly where that money is going. It's not that simple as these institutions put all their money in S&P. They diversify. They pick all these kinds of different investment strategies. And what we saw in, of course, 2008 and 9 was that a lot of folks' pensions were dried up. And that's a fear that I think always should be in the back of your mind, in a way that you can't 100% rely on your pension, and also you can't 100% rely on social security. While it is, in my analysis and the way that I look at it, it's more reliable
Mhm.
than most people want to make it seem today, because there a lot of folks are saying, yeah, social security won't be around in like whatever years. I don't believe those things. The height of the checks you might receive when you retire could be lower. Maybe it doesn't go up with inflation in 20, 30 years or whatever. So it might be lower than you wish. I doubt that it will completely go away, but that's not really even the issue. The issue is that I feel like, as a participant of our society, you feel just more at ease when you take a chunk of your money and invest it in the stock market, because as a Stoic, you're already used to living a simple life, and you don't have a life that you are attached to material things or vacations or eating out and all of these luxury things. So why not invest? Just because it's complicated or because you might lose money when the market goes down? I don't think those are real valid reasons. The reason that we don't invest is we don't know what to invest in, and that makes us scared. And I think that's normal. That's what I experienced my entire life as well. And if you have this kind of proven strategy that's diversified and um, directly tied to the economy with passive investing in the S&P 500, it kind of makes sense. Is you think to yourself, oh, okay, I'm not trying to pick stocks, I'm not trying to get rich quick, I'm not doing all of these crazy things, I'm not trying to quote unquote hedge my portfolio, I don't look at myself as a professional investor. I'm just someone who earns a living, is trying to do the right things, and I just want to make sure that my money also does some work for me. So at some point, I can divorce myself from my time, and yeah, that's always been my goal. And since I got on this path, I felt like I just need to inspire more people to get on this because it's something that now, when I look back on it, is a no-brainer. And I think to myself, yeah, why did no one tell me this in '07 or '08 when I started? But yeah, better late than never. But it can investing can be a lot simpler than most people think.
Yeah, that's right. You're not talking about trying to pick specific stocks,
Yeah,
companies, more complex financial instruments. Instead, I think it's a sensible thing to do is just to look for that S&P 500, some other passive index fund. I think that's good advice. I wonder if you can also speak to like the importance of consistency and compounding in this method, because I think a lot of people,
yeah,
some people are fortunate enough to hear about this just because of their social surroundings, professional
mm,
surroundings, what have you. But
yeah,
others, they haven't, I think, haven't fully internalized the compounding effects that can come through consistent either saving or investing.
yeah. That's a good point. Me too. Like I never had anyone in my family or anyone who invested that I personally knew, because hearing the calculations and hearing the stories are two different things. Because someone can tell you that, oh, if you invest $500 a month, you'll have 1 million in 30 years, and it sounds fun, but you think to yourself, yeah, 30 years, w- I need to have some incentive to invest today. But the thing is that if you invest today and you invest $500 a month, the gains that you make are very insignificant when you compare that to your paycheck. Because let's say you invest $500 and you get, unlikely, but let's say in 10%, in a month you get 10% return. You think, oh, okay, now I have $550. So, and then they say, yeah, but you add another 500, and then keeps going up. But you still think to yourself, oh, okay, then in a year, 5, 6 thousand or whatever. And if I do 10% again, unlikely, but still, let's say you do 10%, is like you get $500, and then you think, okay, well, maybe I make $3,000, $4,000. What can I do with 500? Is that really worth it? And that's a difficult thing to internalize, because yeah, it takes so long before you get the payoff of compounding with bigger amounts. Everyone understands that if I have
Hmm.
$500,000 in my portfolio and I do 10%, we think, oh yeah, 50K, that's awesome. Right? Everyone sees that and says, yeah, that's amazing. But now we have to kind of explain it to ourselves why it makes sense to invest today and why we should be consistent. And I think that has two components. Yes, you're waiting for that moment where when your investments have a return that has more meaning to you, but that's not even the most important thing, I think, as a Stoic investor. The Stoic investor takes pride in being consistent at any virtuous or any positive thing in life. And in my book, investing is one of the most virtuous things you can do because you are saying, okay, I made this amount of money and this amount or this chunk of it goes to cost of living. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to set some money aside for later. And by doing that, I'm practicing discipline. I'm practicing simple living just by the act of investing. Even if I don't get that money back, that's okay because today I'm improving myself. I'm taking my paycheck and I'm saying, okay, this chunk, goodbye. I don't need you. I'm not throwing you away. I'm not spending it on pleasure. I'm not taking that money to a casino. I'm not going to a fancy restaurant and splurging. No, I'm just putting it aside. Maybe for my kids or for someone else later when that 500 bucks becomes 5,000 through compounding. But I'm improving myself today, and for me, that's the most important thing about investing. And the more consistent that I am, the more energy and the more um, satisfaction I actually get from the act of investing because that's how I really look at it. That investing is a act or a habit that I do every single month, and that act is improving my character. And if you look at it that way, you don't even have to think about it financially. So that's really the beauty of it.
Yeah, well, it's an expression of consistency and perhaps a way to practice it.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
and the Stoics talk a lot about how one should be consistent in one's thoughts and actions, and an aspect of that is having regular habits, around worthwhile goals. And for investing, that could be ensuring you have a rainy day fund as a hedge. Perhaps that's raising money for your kids, your family, for yourself, maybe for even charity down the line, whatever
hmm,
it is.
yeah,
It Those goals can be worthwhile, and they're the sort of thing one wants to, if they're worthwhile, then they're the sort of thing you apply consistent character action towards. Yeah, and that's discipline.
yeah. And wealth is definitely worthwhile. Something that will improve your life and hopefully your family's life. So you're impacting more people than yourself, especially if you use the wealth to do good. And when I talk about doing good, I don't necessarily mean about giving it away, but I just mean
Mhm.
also to create a family or an environment where folks don't have to be so stressed and anxious about financial security if that's That's if you can accomplish that at some point in your career, I feel like that's a big contribution.
Yeah. So, who for you? You mentioned a number of models in the book. Like who for you is one of the essential role models of a Stoic investor?
Yeah, the most obvious one is of course Warren Buffett, because of the fact that he has done everything in his life, well, almost everything in his life that the Stoics would do. The only thing that some people kind of put question marks around is that he remarried, or he divorced his wife and then he married the help or something like that. I can't recall exactly, but
Sure.
fine, right? The thing about Warren Buffett is that he still lives in the same house that he bought like 60 years ago or 70 years, because he's like 90. um, he only buys a new car when the repairs and the cost of maintaining his old car kind of don't make sense anymore compared to buying a new car. He loves the activity of investing, he loves his profession. He spends hours a day reading. He did not spoil his kids. In fact, he's giving away, I believe, like 90 something percent of his net worth. He he, uh, he was, I think, the first who signed up for the giving pledge that Bill Gates started, where they basically pledge to give away their almost their entire wealth when they pass. And yeah, when I look at all of those things, that how the way that he lived his life and the way that he invested and the way that he operated his firm, Berkshire Hathaway, I think to myself that there are so many things there that can inspire you. Not only his lifestyle, but also the way that he looks at his career. So yeah, that's I think the most obvious, but at the same time also just the best example, because there are not a lot of folks who really come close. The other person that I also really appreciate is Peter Lynch, who was this rock star fund manager in the 90s and wrote or co-wrote these famous books on investing, One Up on Wall Street and a few others. And he decided to walk away from the fund that he grew to these unbelievable amounts. And he said, "Yeah, for all these years, I actually missed on all of these family occasions and recitals and birthday parties of my kids and family, that I said I need to stop that and retire and just focus on family full time." Where what I appreciate is that he did come to that realization at some point and did not think to himself, "Yeah, I need to have more, 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 more." So that's also someone who I really appreciate for making that decision, because I think it's easier to stay on the treadmill. Well, it's
Mhm.
hard to step away, but of course we can say, yeah, Peter Lynch by that time already made so much money that he didn't even have to work. But still, I think that's something to appreciate. And yeah, and then finally, John Bogle, founder of Vanguard, that he revolutionized passive investing and was one of the founders, or one of the people who started ETFs, low cost ETFs. And what I love most about him is that his firm Vanguard is the second largest asset manager in the world. They manage trillions of dollars of wealth. But when Bogle passed away a few years ago, his net worth was insignificant compared to the trillions of dollars that they managed. So, and that's because he set up his company from the beginning in a way that he wasn't the one who would earn the most when the company did really well. Where, for example, hedge fund managers and a lot of fund managers get paid no matter how their fund performs. But he basically said, yeah, for me, that's not the most important thing. And of course, he did amass millions, but a lot of folks say that he could easily be a billionaire and more. Uh, his net worth was a lot, but still like somewhere around 70, 80 million. But he could have easily done way more. And I think that says a lot about him. He always came to the media and wrote books on, you know, being content and having enough and living a living a good life and all of those things. Where I feel like he was a very stoic person as well. So yeah, those really come to mind, and all different stories, all of course very wealthy, but a lot of nuggets of wisdom there.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, those are solid models. I suppose with Buffett, you have a good example of consistency, kind of clarity of thought. You can see that's admirable in a lot of his writing, speaking, which I think is a good Stoic attribute. And there's the art of knowing when to walk away, as well as with Bogle some model of perhaps of moderation.
Yeah,
and not
exactly.
Knowing what's enough for oneself.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, this has been an excellent conversation. Is there anywhere you'd like to point listeners to learn more about yourself?
Yeah, best way to learn more is on my website, dariusforoux.com, or Stoic Path To Wealth.com.
Awesome. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Stoic Conversations. Please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share it with a friend. If you want to dive deeper still, search Stoa in the App Store or Play Store for a complete app with routines, meditations, and lessons designed to help people become more stoic. And I'd also like to thank Michael Levy for graciously letting us use his music. You can find more of his work at ancientlyre.com. And finally, please get in touch with us. Send a message to stoa@stoameditation.com if you ever have any feedback, questions, or recommendations. Until next time.